Welcome to the First Time Facilitator podcast. Whether you're a first-time facilitator or a seasoned pro, listen in for tips and tricks to make a bigger impact at the next workshop you deliver. And now, your host. She can watch Love Actually over and over without ever getting tired of it. Lynne Hughes.
Hello everyone and welcome to the show. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host Lynne Hughes and I'm here to help you improve your facilitation skills so that you can develop and deliver the best workshop and content the next time that you're in front of an audience. Now, if you haven't already, I'd like to encourage you to sign up to the Flip Chart, which is a monthly-ish newsletter for first-time facilitators. You can sign up at my website, which is at firsttimefacilitator.com, or you can also follow the show on Instagram at firsttimefacilitator, or feel free to add me on LinkedIn. I've had a few listeners add me and send through messages, which is really great. I love hearing from you on any platform. Now, the time this episode goes to air, which is 4 p.m. Monday, Brisbane time, I'll be en route to Jakarta, Indonesia. Now, I've been really lucky enough to travel there a few times for work this year. I'm helping the team out with developing a one-day workshop for our supervisors on getting the courage to speak up. It's been a really, really exciting project to work on. And I've been liaising with some really exceptional facilitators in Indonesia who are incredibly engaging. So engaging that I sat in a workshop pilot for a day that was being delivered in Bahasan Indonesian. And look, I don't even speak the language, but I was sitting up and paying attention the whole day, which I think is a real test for a facilitator. So they did a great job. Now, today's episode is worth listening into for a few reasons, but mainly because my guest today pretty much has a black belt in this stuff. She speaks about facilitation effortlessly and with real passion, and she's been in the game of teaching facilitation to others for many years. Her name is Lynne Cazaly, and she is a keynote speaker, a master workshop facilitator, board director, and a published author. She's delivered keynotes, workshops, and sessions for leaders globally, including Europe, the USA, Asia, and New Zealand. She also uses visuals in her facilitation to drive engagement and taught me a really great hack in this episode for explaining complex instructions. We also talk about the concept of sensemaking, and that might be new to you. It was new to me. And she explains why it's an important attribute for both facilitators and leaders. If you listen in towards the end of the episode, Lynne is also offering a freebie to all first-time facilitator listeners. And you can find out how to access that by listening in or by also viewing the show notes at firsttimefacilitator.com/episode 23. Now, onto the show. Welcome to the First Time Facilitator podcast, Lynne Cazaly.
Hello. Hi. Great to be here.
It's so great to have you on the show. Thanks so much for giving us your time and really appreciate it. I'd love to start just by asking you the question on how you found your feet in the world of training and facilitation. Was it always something that you aspired to, or was it something that you fell into?
It's definitely something I fell into. So my sense is that a lot of people don't kind of leave school or during school go, I'm going to be a facilitator. I think they've got some capabilities that kind of lend themselves to being great facilitators. So my background was as a communications specialist. So I had a background in public relations. I worked in health, sport, art, media, government, and I did some lecturing at university in communications and consulting in communications. And so I was learning a lot about what people think and how they communicate with each other. But the constant theme through all of those roles that I had was that I was playing this interpreter role. I was kind of working for a company, listening to what the management and leadership and the board and directors and everything were saying, and then interpreting that for their community and their stakeholders. And then I'd be listening to the community and stakeholders and interpreting that for the organisation. So I became this, what I think you could call a boundary rider, like in sport. You know, it's the person who's got one leg on either side of the boundary line.
It's a really cool term.
So, there I was. Really what I was doing was facilitating communication between different parties and different stakeholders and groups. So as well as working with with communication, and people started asking me, "Oh, will you facilitate our strategy day or our comms plan or our sales plan?" And I thought, "Oh, I'll be able to do that. I'll have a crack at that." And that's what I did. And then in early 2000s, I did an advanced diploma in facilitation with the Group Work Institute here in Victoria, and that kind of just topped off my experience with some of the great theory around facilitation. So, yeah, it certainly wasn't a planned journey or a planned process, but yeah, I'm happy I found it. I wish I did know about it in those years when you're trying to make a decision about what am I going to study, what am I going to be.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because I think a lot of the facilitators that I've spoken to have been launched from different careers, and it could be project management, communications, like you said. My background is in marketing as well.
Right. Yeah.
We've got people that are software engineers.
Yeah,
and it's, I think what I'm sensing is the theme is within their organisations or their own context, they are being asked to explain what they know. And so they want to become really good at explaining that to people, which is why they find facilitation and then realise, hey, I actually really enjoy this.
Yeah, so it becomes less about their subject matter knowledge and more about the act of helping people and helping people get their work done or helping people understand something.
That's right. So when you were asked to facilitate your first strategy day, we're talking all these years ago because you're very experienced now. I don't know if you can reflect on that time and sort of share what you were thinking or what your strategies were going into that day, because it would have been pretty daunting if you
it was.
had the
I
experience.
Think, I was really nervous and just the thumping heart most of the day and couldn't sleep well the night before and wondering, will I stuff this up and what will I do if they don't know what to do and is my agenda good? And so all of this self-doubt. And so I think this is one of the things that is the biggest challenge is that this confidence, and we end up being too much worried about ourselves and we forget about actually helping the people that we're there to help. So, yeah, I had the classic doubt, paranoia. I'm no good at this. I'll crash and burn. This will ruin my career. Hey, I still have some of those thoughts.
I was just going to ask you that question. I mean, are there nights where you've got some workshops and keynote speeches that you've sort of refined over the years? Even with refined content to new audiences, do you still sort of think the night before, oh gosh, how am I going to go?
Yeah. And even if I'm not using much content, that is, I've crafted an agenda with them, and so it's about them, the participants contributing the content. I'm still thinking, gee, I don't even know these people. I'm going to walk into this room, and every time I walk into a room to facilitate, a bunch of strangers every time. So you've got to have this ability to rapidly build rapport and connect with people because you need them to be on your side, to trust you really quickly, that you're there to help them. Not to tell them what to do, but to work with them. And that, I don't think that just comes from cockiness, like, oh, I'll be able to do this. That gets you into a lot of trouble, whereas more of the humility of going, gee, and curiosity, wow, I wonder what they need help with today.
Yeah.
I wonder what I'll be able to help them do, rather than, gee, I hope it all goes well. Because it may not go well, and if I'm hanging on to, it better go well, it's going to go where it's going to go. So,
so coming from a place of curiosity is what works for you.
Definitely. I wonder why that person said that. I wonder where they're going with that, rather than, gee, what a douche, like, what's he doing and why is she being just going, wow, that's really interesting. So that's some stuff I think that comes from the Group Work Institute and their philosophy around facilitation, which was, just slowing things down and really being more of service to the room rather than thinking you've got to control everything.
I think that's kind of difference between when you're delivering a speech, which is a very, it's kind of like a solo event and you're there. You definitely want to engage people and not want to be arrogant. Facilitation is about drawing people in and, like you said, making them feel comfortable. And I think it is, you need to show that authentically you are curious about what's going on for them, especially, I guess, people come into your room from all walks of life and they come in with all different attitudes as well. And sometimes it's very noticeable when someone just doesn't want to be there. Is that something, how do you cope with that? It's like, I know from my experience when I first started, it was my worst nightmare. When I knew that someone wasn't interested, I felt instantly a little bit anxious. But now after talking to facilitators, it's interesting finding out what their strategies are. So how do you cope with that?
Well, it happens all the time. Even last week I was facilitating a session and there was someone in the room and they're doing this most of the time. And then they're eating their lunch at the time that wasn't lunchtime and they're in and out of the room. You kind of go, yeah, do they not want to be here, or, you know, what's going on? And I remember facilitating some workshops for a logistics firm, and we had a lot of the drivers of the vehicles that would, they had to come along to the sessions. And a lot of the other team, people working in the warehouse and the mechanical people and the admin and customer service, a lot of them were very keen. But the people who were driving the vehicles were just, it was totally this every time. They're like, they'd look around the room that I'd set up with, nice Post-it notes and markers and stuff. And they'd go, what's this shit? That's literally what they would say. This looks like my kid's room. What's this crap? What are we doing today? And I never engaged in you're here to do blah, blah, blah. I never went into that parental or teacher mode. I just zip it and think, yeah, of course they're going to come in here and wonder what this is. They just want to be in their truck delivering the products and doing that sort of work. They don't want to be in a workshop.
No.
So again, I think I'm not here to fix them, but I'm here to, again, build trust as quickly as I can and build engagement throughout the session. And time and time again in those sessions around change, some of those drivers would come up to me at the end and they'd shake my hand. They go, yeah, thanks, that was good. I didn't fall asleep. Yeah, it was really good. So kind of thinking I don't have to win them over at all, and I don't have to win them over in the first 5 minutes, but just carry on,
Steady.
Yeah, steady, and time and again they kind of came on board throughout the workshop and participated in activities and contributed, and we were able to draw them out. So
that is a bit of a win. I know you're not winning them over, but you would have been pretty happy at the end.
Every day I'd walk out, yes,
got a smile.
Yeah. And as soon as they're contributing, and participating, even tiny things like what's your name or how long have you worked here, or gee, you must have seen a lot of change in the organisation. As soon as someone contributes a story about what they do or what they've seen, I just think, yes, great. I've got them now contributing to something that this whole group's going to be working on. That's good.
Yeah.
It's safe for them to speak up here.
Fantastic. And so let's just say in a workshop of, say, 20 people, and there is like that odd one or two people that aren't engaging at all. Do you try to coax them in any way, like pay special attention to them, or do you sort of focus on the 18 other people that are engaging? Or does it depend on the context environment? There's a lot of variables here.
It does. It does depend on that. But I like to look at people's behaviour and think of their behavioural styles, not their characteristics or personality, but what's the behaviour they're exhibiting at the moment. And if they're quiet and not actively participating, then my thinking is, well, maybe they're thinking. Maybe they're not disengaged. And I use visuals all the time in my workshops. So, here's a flip chart. It's in my office at the moment. Well, it's always here. But I'll always be using flip charts in my workshops. And the effect that visuals have on people, on their eyes, their mind, they can't help but look. And engagement naturally, automatically goes up. So, engaging with people when it's all talk is very difficult, can be very difficult. But as soon as you've got visuals there, bam, engagement goes up. I can't help but look at the stuff that you're capturing from around the room.
Yeah, I was just on the back of what Lynne's showing me is a flip chart, so her website and a light bulb. And like you said, you just can't unsee that. You've seen it, it's in your head. You're sort of thinking, what's that about?
Yeah.
I'm seeing some really beautiful handwriting, which I also saw on your website. And the way that you draw is it's really simple, but it's effective. And I know what you're trying to convey. Have you always been interested in drawing, or is this, again, just a tool that you've brought into your facilitation toolkit because you think visuals are so important?
Yeah, I have no art training at all. This is not about art. I say it's smart, not art. Mm-hmm. So it's how are we capturing and reflecting back to people the stuff that they're saying. I don't like the idea of someone sitting in the corner, typing into a laptop. Oh, I'm the scribe. I'm capturing what's happening today. I think we don't know what you're capturing, and it's useless going into a computer. So let's make it visible, and then people can see. And because the using the tools of a visual is facilitation. So if facilitation means to make easier, visuals do that. They instantly help make engagement easier, communication easier, collaboration easier, impact easier. It makes it easier to get to outcomes by about 25%. Recall is easier by about 33%. Wow. So if we're not using visuals and we're facilitators, we're really, pushing shit uphill. We're making it harder for us and for the group.
Yeah, really good point. So, and then you've written a book about this called Visual Mojo.
Yes, yeah.
And in that book, do you actually explain how then we can use visual cues as a facilitator? What's involved in that book?
Yeah, so it's Visual Mojo. So that's around the confidence of using visuals, because most of us think we're crap at drawing, and so this is about how to capture your thinking, convey information and collaborate using visuals. So I go through how to draw simple shapes and use lines, how to draw people, because I think the sooner you put people in some of the pictures and charts, anytime we capture anything on a flip chart or a whiteboard, don't just write words. We have to work too hard to digest that. So some words and visuals will really help get the message across. So whether you're capturing, you're eliciting information from the group and you write some of that up there with an anchor image, as I call it, something that helps people attach those words with an icon, or whether you're explaining something. You might be explaining, okay, now we're going to break into 3 groups, and those long-winded instructions that facilitators sometimes have. And sure enough, someone in the room will go, what? What do we have to do? So I find that if I sketch out, groups of 3, and I'll draw 3 people, draw a clock, 15 minutes, and then a speech bubble, and I'll put the key words, what we're going to talk about in groups of 3 for 15 minutes. Then that flip chart is there and no one asks you, what are we doing? Because they just look at it. And you explain it and point to each, break into groups of 3, talk for 15 minutes on this topic, and I'll remind you, when it's time to wrap up. And that just works every time.
Where has that information been all my life? Our colleague and I just ran a workshop this morning, and it was, I was trying to make this very complicated instruction very simple. So I was staging it and checking in every now and then. But if I had just drawn it, and the time limit, and this is where you go, and oh my gosh, that is something I'm going to start implementing straight away. And I don't think you need drawing skill. If you can draw a circle and letters and numbers.
Exactly, that's it. Even keywords, if there are 3 steps to this activity, and go, here's the first step on the first chart, we're doing this. The second step's on the next chart, the third step's on the next chart.
Yeah, fantastic.
You can have all 3 charts pinned up at once, so those that need to see the big picture can see everything. And, compartmentalizes information. So we've got information in chunks. All of this is making it easier. That's facilitation. How do we make this thing easier? And breaking down something like complicated instructions for an activity is, we need to be really good at that. We need to have great clarity when we're delivering information.
Yeah.
And don't just rely on words for that.
No, thank you. That's excellent. I just wanted to share a quote that you said. So you mentioned that every time you're working with more than one other person, it's time to put facilitation skills to work. So why do you think this is the case? And I guess on the flip side of that, do you think people in organisations recognise that? Because I'm going to give you my opinion here. I think people think that facilitation is a skill that's somewhere else. It's that the trainer or facilitator needs to have. It's not a role of a leader. What I'm seeing in here is every meeting, if you've got more than one person, you're going to have to draw on these skills. So can you explain that a bit further?
Yeah, well, this is coming from the book called Leader as Facilitator, which is about how to inspire, engage and get work done. So this is a book I wrote in 2016. And this is exactly that point, which is helping leaders realise that every time they get the team together or even just have a one-on-one or one-on-two, one-on-three conversation, they need to just switch into the role of facilitator because they've got to make that little meeting easier. We know how much meetings suck so bad, right? They're run badly. And that's the main problem. They're run badly. We can talk about lots of other things about them, but mainly meetings are run really poorly. So with some facilitation skill, a leader can not become a full-time facilitator, but just swing into that role and think, okay, how do I need to make this environment safe for these people to speak, which probably means they need to shut up more. What are the questions? What's the topic? What are they actually bringing this group together for? And every time there's more than one person, they've now got the opportunity to draw that information out of those people. Because, you see it a lot. You'll have one loudmouth in a small group meeting and two other people don't feel like speaking. Well, it's the leader's job to, just quieten the loudmouth down and help lift up and encourage the other two, not shut the loudmouth down, and not expect those quieter people like, now come on, lean in and speak up. No, it's not their job. It's the leader's job to make the environment great and elicit that information. So, I'm seeing more and more workplaces wanting to do this because they realise leadership's changing and they have to create more collaborative, co-created environments.
Yeah, I'm looking at leadership in what the aspirational requirements of a leader, and sometimes it seems like it is this unicorn. They've got to be just great people, but also have some technical capability, be a great role model, listen to people, coach them. It's like, wow, we're asking them for so much, and especially in the world we're living in now, which is just subject to so much change. And I was on your website before, and I loved there was a workshop that really caught my eye, and it was called the Sensemaking workshop. And I thought, I'd love to talk to you about that. So you said that the Institute for the Future predicts that sense-making to be the number one skill we need for 2020, which is only a couple of years away. What is the skill of sense-making? I'm sure our audience, it may be the first time they've heard that term.
Yeah, it kind of sounds a bit, am I allowed to use the word wanky? That's not,
it's an Australian podcast.
Okay. I've said a few other swear words that I'd probably get in trouble for in the United States. But sense-making can sound like, oh, it's a made-up word, or don't you mean making sense? So sense-making is when you connect the dots with information and try and work out what the hell's going on. And we're often trying to do that in teams and groups. We get people together, particularly in meetings and workshops. We're trying to make sense of what's going on, make some decisions and some plans and put stuff into practice. And I think challenges come when we bring people together and we just expect that they're going to start collaborating and working well. But if we do some sense making, we give them some skills about how to maybe map out their ideas or think or talk together. And the facilitator can be a sense maker. So you very much use visual skills. You can be a sense maker using visuals. So it's kind of creating a map. Whenever we're traveling somewhere or we're looking for a coffee shop, we get our phone out. We're great cartographers. We're great users of maps. And in sense making, maps really are the visual charts. Is showing this is where we are. This is where we want to go to, and let's talk about now how we're going to get there, because that's kind of the overriding model that most workplaces and meetings are following, which is this is where we are, this is where we need to get to, now how are we going to get there? So Sensemaking helps people connect the dots and see, wow, what's really going on here? And then it helps us make better decisions.
Yeah, because a lot of the time, I guess, in meetings, because we are so time poor and there's something that's thrust upon us and we need to solve it, and we go straight into solution mode. And we never really step out and talk about the process of how we're going to solve it because we have no time, it needs to be solved. Yes. And then you think, by going through that process, it's very easy to clear to see, you know, what are the risks, what's going on here, do we agree with that? Okay, this is what will inform our decision process then.
Yeah, so now you're uncovering a better process, which great facilitation is having a really good process underlying the work that the team's going to do, and you're going to help them, you know, get through that work easier than if you weren't there in the room or if they had someone else other than you.
You've made yourself redundant.
Yeah.
So, love the variety of workshops that you do offer. I'd like to hear a bit about, let's just say you get approached by a client and they want something that's not off the shelf, not within your range, but you know that you can deliver it. I'd like to know, what is your process of putting together a package or a course for someone? They give you their objectives. What do you do next?
So this is probably a little bit more like a training design or learning design, which one of my earlier roles was working in a sales team, and we helped all of the business development team that were out there on the road selling. We designed and delivered all of their professional development. So I was constantly having to create new programs. So this happened a lot in one of these consulting roles that I had. But what we do is kind of find out those similar questions. Where's the team at now, and where do we need to get them to? So what's that gap of performance? And until we can identify that gap, I think it's all just waffle. You know, if we start saying, let's run an activity about this, and let's get them to read Simon Sinek's Start With Why, and then let's get them to watch that TED Talk where there's a single guy dancing at the festival.
Oh, and the second follower. Yeah, I've seen that everywhere. So
I think there's a lot of these kind of, I'd say, cliched tools that we might throw into a training program, thinking that that's, that'll do it, that'll make them learn. But I'd come back and go, so where's this team or group at now? What are the main things they're doing really well? And what's the stuff we need them to either do better, or where's the new capability? What's the new thing that we need them to do? And often I see teams or groups trying to achieve, and consultants, learning and development consultants, trying to fit too much into one day. And so we've got, okay, today, and here's 15, learning outcomes.
I know.
It's crazy. It's not going to happen. So if you can boil that down and go, well, let's just focus on one or two, or maximum three. What are the absolute must-haves? And then maybe some of those other ones, if you're following that 70-20-10 model of learning on the job and learning through coaching and then formal face-to-face learning, then use that as some of the on the job or the coaching. Push some of those other modules or learning outcomes or topics off to other ways that people are going to learn, not in that 10% when you're doing face-to-face. So that's how I do, is find out what this gap is that we're closing and try and narrow and get this gap as specific and as measurable as possible, rather than come and teach us conflict resolution, which is huge.
We want training on communication.
Yeah. So we want to go, well, what's going on in communication? Where are the problems? What are the issues? Oh, these two people aren't talking well to each other. Okay, well, that's not to be covered in the workshop. We want something that's going to be of value to the whole group, and not just be of value to them, but is delivered in a way that we've got some chance at making some sort of shift. Yeah. We're not going to totally change them, but some chance. And that's the visual mojo or sense-making workshop. I've refined that over a number of years, and I just keep the elements that work and that people like, and I keep getting rid of the stuff that doesn't work and that people don't like. And so every time I run that visual session, I know I'm closing a gap. around confidence in people's ability to think and communicate visually.
Yeah, fantastic. Because you iterate it over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to keep that gap as narrow as possible, here's the thing that this session's going to address, not all of these 15 things.
Yeah, it's too confusing, too ambitious. Yeah.
Set yourself up for failure. Like, failure's sexy, but not that sort of failure.
No. I've never heard failure been described as sexy before.
Oh, it is. It's everywhere now, isn't it? It's the right thing to do.
I must have been in a cave. Okay. So when you are designing these programs, are there any particular icebreakers or energizers that you lean on that, this works every time?
Oh, well, I could be speaking an unpopular opinion here, but I don't use icebreakers. So I don't have a go-to icebreaker. I think my view is they're a little bit dated and a little cliched, and lots of people I've seen and coached and worked with use quite dated and tacky activities that have no relevance.
The 2 lies and 1 truth.
Oh, please. I'm about to just go off my mind about this. Why would you get people together and you're trying to work with them for the day? Why would you encourage them to lie to each other? And you're trying to build trust.
I don't know. I've sat through about 15 workshops where that's been
It must be stopped immediately. That activity is not good. Unless you're training for ASIO and you're trying to work out you're trying to catch liars, right? That's a great activity for them. But I think generally in the business world, get rid of stupid activities and anything that involves a blindfold. No, just don't put blindfolds on people. Stupid. We're trying to build trust.
I think that was stamped out in the 90s because I don't remember anything in my adult years.
I still
with the whole safety legislation and
people still suggest it.
And big markers trying to trip people around. Oh, it's a trust exercise.
No, it's not. That is not how you build trust.
Setting people up for failure.
Yeah, I'm always saying for what purpose for this activity? Why am I running this? If I'm trying to break the ice, then there are ways to break the ice. The best way to get people to break the ice is to get them to start working on something. Like, they're probably there for work, so let's get them to start working on something.
Yeah.
Why make them play some silly game?
Yeah.
What issue do people have about actually starting some of the work? There are some pieces of work that you could begin working on. The best way to get people working together is to get them to start working together.
Yeah. It sounds so simple.
It does. So I think these icebreakers and games are kind of hangovers from the 50s, 60s and 70s, and they were probably the ways that our teachers were taught, and then that's carried on. We think, that's what you do, or the training and assessment certificate says you must conduct an icebreaker. But I would say, well, who decided that? So there's some of my views on icebreakers. I think you can cause more damage to people by making them feel embarrassed, socially awkward, and I think you've got to keep a very, very safe environment and very low risk early on in a workshop.
Yeah.
And icebreakers, to me, most of them are too risky. And I think, what's the most socially awkward, socially anxious, introverted person going to think about this?
Yeah,
and
completely
most of the
shut
time,
off.
It's not good.
Yeah.
So, a lot of us are experiencing engagement challenges in teams and at workshops, and maybe it could be because we've done some things that are negatively impacting how we're building engagement and building trust.
Yeah, I spoke to a guy called Sean D'Souza on the podcast last week, and he pretty much said, no one cares about your bullet points. Nobody cares about your content until they feel safe.
Yeah.
I was like, that is such a good point.
Yeah, it's so true.
They don't get... Yeah, because they're seeing where they are in the workshop, what's comfortable, what's going to happen to them. So it's all about them. They're not actually looking and seeing what the information is because they don't feel that they can trust the environment yet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And And some, by the end of the day, are still going, no, still can't trust the environment. And that's why they've sat there, arms crossed, disengaged looking face. However, they might still be thinking. We can't make an assumption that someone's disengaged simply by how they look.
I love that. I love that mindset. So let's just say, Lynne, you've gone in, you've identified the gaps, you've written the most amazing content, everyone's engaged, thinking about it, taking action. They walk out. How then can you, in some way, how can you embed the learning from that day's workshop, or what strategies do you have so that when they leave that day feeling inspired, motivated, fantastic, that they do something or they change some behaviour following that? So in 3 months' time, I mean, it's such a tough thing to do, and I'm just curious, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so 3 months for me is a long time. How do I get a behaviour change in a lot shorter time? So I'm looking for behaviour change on the day in the workshop. So I'm wanting to see people, particularly with my visual thinking, visual mojo, visual sense-making workshop, I'm checking and testing throughout the day to see, are these people shifting? Like, are they getting a new behaviour? Not waiting till the end and then trying to do some follow-up webinar 2 weeks later to check in with learning. I'm looking for little points throughout the day, like probably 30 of them, and I'm checking, have they got that? Did they get that? And then the beautiful task of reincorporation. So then I'll be running some activities later on in the day. Are they reincorporating stuff we covered in the morning? So now they're starting to put this stuff to practice, and is their thinking shifting? Is their behaviour in their team or their group, whatever the topic is that starting to change? Now they're trying it out, they're trying it on. I think we expect a lot that, here, watch all my PowerPoint slides and now go behave differently, and it just isn't like that. So what opportunities are you giving people throughout the day to try some new behaviours on?
Yeah, fantastic. That's so embedding that in the terms of the content and the way that you structured the course and all the learning. That's really good. Yep, love that.
So if you come back to going, well, the gap now is a very narrow gap that we've defined. Now I can make some really good stuff happen to close that narrow gap, rather than having this broad topic of communication. Maybe, the much narrower gap I'm covering is delivering 90-second explanations in meetings. Maybe that's the narrow gap. Yeah. And now I can deliver skill around that, and we can practice it, and they can, by the end of the day, they will have new behaviours, and they will not want to let those behaviours go, because they'll have tried them on. They'll go, yeah, actually that feels pretty good. I've now seen it in other people in the room. I'm seeing how effective it is. And one of my favourite tasks is just to give people some homework just within 72 hours. So I give them a task that they have to come back to me with, just individually. So safe, just come back to me. It's not broadcast to the whole team or group. It's just straight back to me. Here's a demonstration of one of their skills or behaviours connected with the workshop.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really fair. 72 hours and non-confrontational.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I find the people who do that go on and do really good stuff with the program, and the people who are still don't quite have the confidence, I've got an online program then that I send people an enrolment to, and I find that the people who haven't sent me their homework are the ones that go straight into the online program, because they want to learn a bit more, or they want to feel it out a bit more, and they'll take a little bit longer, and then their homework will come through.
Oh, that's good. At least they're still completing the homework.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
The majority of people do, because they want some feedback. How am I going? Or, maybe they feel like, oh, this is looking pretty crappy, and I go, no, it looks really good. So we come back to this mojo or this confidence. Not only does the facilitator need it, but in a training situation, you kind of have to confirm or affirm that when people have got that competency, like, let them know, let them know that they're going well. Or I might say, give them that social proof, or I'll go, look, I've seen, 3,500 people do this program, and I can tell you, you're doing really well. And they'll go, oh, okay. So compared to others, I'm doing okay. Go, yeah, you've got this.
Oh, that's so, great strategy.
With some feedback.
Yeah.
Direct feedback to them. I can see you're doing well with this. So some of that growth mindset stuff, I can see you've worked really hard on this.
Yeah.
That
like the acknowledgement.
that effort.
Yeah. Oh, look, we're getting so many practical tips from you, Lynne. What is one piece of practical advice that you could offer to a first-time facilitator or to yourself, say, 15, 20 years ago, whenever you started that one-day strategy session, if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice, what would that be?
As a facilitator, I'd say don't go in thinking that you know the answer. And some of the best ways to build engagement in a team or group is to push the work into the room, or push the questions out into the group. So rather than you playing consultant or subject matter expert or teacher, as in I have the answers to this, I know, I'm going to share, that you put the challenge or the questions out to the group, and that's the work that they're going to start doing. You know how I said don't play silly icebreakers? Maybe some of the ice breaking is get them to answer some of the initial questions about this topic. What are their thoughts? What do they know about it? And this gets them participating, contributing, and you being more of the facilitator, not the person who has all the answers.
That's fantastic advice. And on that, Lynne, I'd like to thank you so much for all of your time, your insight. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've been scribbling. You can't read my writing. It's not as good as yours. But
did you use any shapes or icons?
I did use some circles, and I've used some arrows that have linked things together.
Good.
Yeah, so I'm kind of taking some baby steps on what you've recommended in terms of your visual mojo. I'm not at mojo level yet.
With the podcast, if you want to put a link there for people to shoot me an email, and if they just say, look, I heard you on this podcast, I'll send back. I've got like a PDF with some icons on it that people can follow and draw and practice. So I can send that right on back to them for just a little gift this afternoon.
Oh, wow, a gift for our audience. That's the first time we've had a gift from one of our... Oh, actually, no, sorry, I lied. We had a template sent through back in episode 8. But so, Lynne, your website is at Lynne Cazaly, LYNNECAZALY.com, and we'll link to that on the show notes as well. And you've also got a huge following on Twitter, so we'll put your Twitter account on there if anyone wants to ask you some questions on that.
Yes.
But thank you so much for your time and all your insight. The stuff that you're rattling off is just, it's so... Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff I've kind of heard before, but majority of things are just simple tweaks in terms of the way that you can explain an instruction using symbols. It's going to improve my game by 10% straight away. So I really appreciate that.
You'll save time. The message will land and they'll go, wow, she is a smooth facilitator.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks again, Lynne. I'm sure you'll get a bit of feedback from this one.
All right. Thanks. Great to speak to you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to First Time Facilitator. If you like the episode, please share it with your mates or subscribe to the podcast feed in iTunes. Till next time,